So the faster and more concise I can deliver on that promise I made when they clicked on the video, the happier they're going to be and the more likely they're going to subscribe to me. So you have to be very aware on why people are listening or watching your video.
This is Your Purposeful Life, and I'm your host, Adrian Starks. I'm a speaker, podcaster, narrator, writer, and entrepreneur. On this podcast, we're taking a different approach to the understanding of purpose because it's not a one-size-fits-all. There will be a variety of guests expressing their purpose through the human mess we call the human journey. These conversations will guide you to a better awareness and understanding of your unique purpose in the daily life of mistakes, changes, and challenges, and how to put that purpose into action, bringing you more experiences of success, fulfillment, and achievement on your terms. Let's go on this journey of purpose together. Welcome back, everyone, to Your Purposeful Life podcast, and I'm your host, Adrian Starks, and it is here where we are changing the conversation around purpose because we want to help you shape your purpose your way. Today, I would love to welcome on a special guest named Jesus Ramirez to our podcast and community. Jesus, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Adrian. How about yourself?
I'm doing great too, and I'm going to be doing a lot better because today you're going to help us learn more about YouTube, how to get more subscribers. We're going to talk about the 1 million subscribers, how to do that, and also surefire ways to stand out as a YouTube creator because that's where things are these days. It's on video, right?
I completely agree with that statement. If you look at not just YouTube, but all the other platforms, they're all going video first. I mean, there was just this big thing going with Instagram not long ago where people were upset because the algorithm is now preferring video rather than photos. So video content is what's hot now. YouTube is doing both long form, which is a traditional way of doing video, and then now the shorter form with YouTube Shorts because of the increase of popularity with platforms such as TikTok.
So TikTok really set the way for videos becoming the thing for social media.
For sure.
I hear you too. I realized that recently Reels have been a big thing on Instagram and also on Facebook because that apparently gets more viewers looking at your things and can lead to other things too. All right, so that's going to be great. I'm excited to learn more about what we're going to talk about today. Before we do that, for all of our listeners here, you know the drill. If you've already done it, great. But if you're a new listener, make sure you go ahead and download this podcast onto any podcast platform of your choice by going to our website, yourpurposeful.life. And it is there where you can subscribe to the show and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you click that notification bell, like, comment, and share. And back now to our special guest of the hour here, Jesus Ramirez. What can I say? There's a reason why I have him on the show today. He's packing a lot of things with his background. Let's just start first with the fact that he is a graphic artist and educator specializing in Adobe Photoshop. His clients include Adobe, Microsoft, Motorola, and Condé Nast. Did I say that right? Condé Nast?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll make sure I said it right. Most recently, Jesus has worked as a finisher in the Hollywood industry, creating film and TV posters for HBO, Hulu, Netflix, and CBS. He also runs a Photoshop training channel, one of the world's most popular Photoshop YouTube channels. Get this, with over 1.9 million subscribers. That's what we're going to be talking about today, how to get those kind of subscribers. Over the last 7 years, Jesus has been a speaker at over 30 conferences worldwide, most notably Adobe Max, Creative Pro, Photoshop World, Photo Plus, and WPPI. In 2019, he is one of Cal State's East Bay's 40 under 40 recipients. Wow. Jesus, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here. And wow, I mean, I'm even impressed hearing that I don't even think about half of that stuff on a normal day basis. So I get reminded when I do things like this, like, oh yeah, I did that.
You did do that. But I'm impressed because you have a message you want to share with people. And your message is this: everything was always a struggle for you, but you reached the top of your field through hard work and perseverance, which I find that a lot of people don't see or hear about a lot. They see the
100%.
Result of things, you know?
Yeah.
And so hearing this is going to be very good for the audience today. Before we get started with that, I want to know a little bit more about you. So we talked about you growing up. Well, this is before we went on live, everyone. We talked about where we're both from. Jesus is from the Bay Area. I'm from Seattle.
Yes.
So in the Bay Area, what was it like for you growing up, in that situation? Did this inspire who you are today?
I mean, for sure. And I'll take even a step back just to give people full context of my backstory. So I was actually born in Mexico. I was born in Mexicali, Baja California, Mexico, which is in the border
Okay.
with California. My father was born and grew up in LA. As an adult, he decided to move to Mexico. So my dad's first language is English. My first language is Spanish.
Okay.
And when I was about 9 years old, my parents decided to move to the Bay Area. So my dad and I actually went to the same high school, but I'm an immigrant and he's not. So it's that weird dynamic
Mm.
where the childhood home where my dad grew up is here in the Bay Area. My grandparents still live there. My grandmother is the only one still alive, so my grandmother lives there, and it was always interesting because I was fortunate. I grew up in Alameda, California, which is a fairly affluent area, but we didn't have money. So I
Mm.
was fortunate enough to grow up in a place where there was a lot of means, but not necessarily in my home,
Mhm.
which, I could have just as easily grown up down the street in some really rough areas.
Mhm.
So that was definitely a huge benefit, which allowed me to see things that I probably would not have seen otherwise. I got to see people who I thought were successful. And successful doesn't mean like, celebrities or anything like that. It just means like, oh, this person owns a bakery. Oh, that person's a dentist, like
Mhm.
that kind of success. And that kind of laid the foundation that if I wanted to be successful, I needed to learn how to do something because I
Mm.
knew that people who, at least in my world at the time, everybody who I saw that I wanted to grow up and be like knew how to do something. Even if my mom is a hairstylist and I saw that she put food on the table by cutting people's hair. So she knew how to do something.
Mhm.
So that was my mentality, like grow up and learn how to do something. For a very brief period, we moved down to Southern California to Coachella Valley. For people listening who are not familiar with Coachella, there's a really big concert once a year, and it became really popular several years ago when they did a Tupac, I believe, hologram with Snoop Dogg and
Yeah,
several different artists, which is
I
fantastic. But
remember that.
I think that performance kind of put them on the map worldwide, and people can at least have some context of what Coachella is. But living there is a rural community, a lot of farmland. So living out there, that's where my mom's family was living at the time. And I was about 15, and my uncle said something along the lines of, "You want to go make some money?" And I said, "Sure." I was 15, and I would love some money. So he took me out to pick dates. So I got
Mm.
on a palm tree and started picking dates, and it was the worst 2 hours of my life. At that point, I realized there is no way that I'm not going to learn how to do something because this is not going to be an alternative. And, it's, honest work and bless people who do that, but it wasn't for me. So I had that seed in my head that I needed to learn how to do something. So I hope that answered your question.
It absolutely did. And I like how you said that moment you were like, no, I'm not doing this. I got to figure out how to do something that I like to do that I can make some money doing. And that's where we're all at, trying to figure out our purpose and how to yield
Hmm.
that purpose into an action and to serve people and to get paid for doing that. Speaking of this purpose here, your journey also goes into your college years where I believe I was reading about you. You were a collegiate player in soccer, as we would
Yes.
say, football, the correct term for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so thinking about that, I just recently read an article about Dennis Rodman, the basketball player,
Hmm.
and his daughter is signing one of the, I
Yeah.
think it's the highest paid
Highest.
contract for
Yes.
women's soccer.
Hmm.
Was it like
Yes.
1.5 million, I believe?
Yeah. Yeah. Some along those lines.
Yeah. And thinking of that at first, I was like, why? I was like, why is she not playing basketball? Then I thought about Dennis Rodman and how much he ran on the court. And I was like, that
Hmm.
makes perfect sense to me. So this idea of you pushing through perseverance and having the endurance is what some of your terminology is for business, pushing
Yeah.
through. Did your soccer ever affect that? Like this idea of being able to push through things and have longevity and build up the endurance for things. Did that
Well,
come from soccer?
100%, a hundred
Okay.
percent, and I'll put it into context as well. So I feel that there is nothing quote unquote special about me. I feel that I'm not smarter than anyone. I'm not a better athlete than anyone. But the one attribute that I will give myself is that I'm willing to outwork anyone.
Mm-hmm.
To give you an example, I was not a very good player. I just wasn't. I didn't make my high school soccer team freshman year or sophomore year. Junior year, I barely made varsity, and varsity, I'm sorry, freshman, sophomore didn't make the team. Junior year was JV, junior varsity, and then senior year was the only year I played varsity. But out of my team, I was one of three players who played in college. And that's because I was willing to work at getting better at something that I necessarily wasn't good at, but I wanted to get better at.
Mm.
And it was a valuable lesson. I always compare business to athletics because I see a lot of similarities. At the end of the day, in business, it really doesn't matter where you are, where you grew up. Like none of that matters. Just like in a sport, can you play?
Mm.
If you can't, that's fine. You can learn. You can go get up in the morning and run. You can go to the gym. You can get a coach. Same thing with business. Like I didn't know anything about running a business, but I was very lucky to have mentors and trial and error and just keep that same mentality of repetition. So I'm a big fan of repetitions. One of the reasons why I decided to start doing podcasts is because I wanted to start my own podcast, but then I realized I'm not very good at talking. So I need repetitions. So I started going to podcasts and being a guest, share
Mhm.
the knowledge that I have. And that helps me with repetitions to get better at what I want to do. So to answer your question, I think athletics definitely helps set the mindset of if you want to do something, just practice, 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 and eventually you'll get better. It might not be fast, but
Mhm.
eventually you will get better.
You're absolutely right. And I believe you're a great speaker. Just want to add to
Thank you. I appreciate that.
that. And this idea of repetition for you is very important because I believe truthfully that repetition, it doesn't make perfect, but it does make us improve and allow us to be more effective. And that's
Mhm.
what you are. You're very effective in what you're doing. Now, traveling further down this road of your success, of this journey of yours, let's talk about your passion for creating. A
Mhm.
lot of people create things out here right now, and we live in an era where everyone wants to be the person. And I must say that it's basically a lot of it is attention based, but there's
Yeah,
a lot of people who are creating from the heart because they really want to share something. Why are you so passionate about what you do?
that's a very good question. Two reasons I would say. Number one is just something that I just enjoy doing.
Mhm.
I just like doing. Like people often say, "What do you do for fun?" Well, I go online and I just, look at creativity. I look at Photoshop stuff. I look at
Mhm.
other types of creativity. I will get on the computer and just mess around with Photoshop. And isn't that your job? Yeah, but that's what I like to do. So if I wasn't getting paid to do it, I would do it anyway. So
There
that's
we go.
reason number one. Reason number two is, and perhaps even more important, is as soon as I started making my work public, I started receiving a lot of feedback from people in how my content was helping them, whether it was at school, at work. I had one person email me, right around the time I started. I started my YouTube channel in 2012, so it's been over 10 years.
Wow.
But
Okay.
maybe at about year two or three, I received a message from a gentleman who had lost his hand in an accident, and he had mentioned that my videos were just helping him, get through the day. He would just watch Photoshop videos and he would do whatever to his photos, and it was good therapy for him. And
Mm.
it just helped the days go by faster, not having to focus on the accident, which to me was incredible. Like I wasn't surprised for people to say, "Oh, your tutorial helped me with a school project," or "Your tutorial helped me get a job," because that makes sense. Something that I just never thought would happen is like, "Oh my God, somebody went through a horrific accident and my videos is therapy for them." So that, helps me stay motivated and wanting to create more because I'm sure that there's people that I'll never hear about, but their lives are also positively impacted by my work, whether it's school, jobs, or just their personal life.
Love it. And like you were saying, there's some people that may not ever say anything to you, but they're in the background watching and being inspired by you. And I think this is something for the listeners today that are going to be chiming in more about YouTube and building this platform for yourself because you're not going to get a lot of people that are going to say, "Hey, great job and awesome, you're this," right away, or even people that
Hmm.
do that. But it doesn't
Yeah,
mean that you can't be effective at it. And this is why
100%.
you're passionate about what you do. Now, speaking of passion, of course, when there's passion, there also comes some struggle. And for a lot of people, they stop in their tracks when they face some kind of resistance. But you, on the other hand, once again, you have pushed through and you live what you talk about. And I like to talk about the human mess. Sometimes there's things that just happen, and within that mess, there comes a process.
Hmm.
So back in 2021, it looks like you suffered a stroke.
Yes.
And from that moment on, you were able to still find a way with your purpose to push through and to continue on through your business. I want to take you back a little bit here. Where were you when this happened?
Yeah.
And was it a progression up to that point, or is this something just happened all of a sudden?
Yeah. So I don't know how, but I somehow got a neck injury. That neck injury led to a cervical dissection in the artery on my neck. What that means is I just, somehow got an injury. The neck, in an attempt to heal itself, created a clot.
Mm,
That clot became dislodged and it went into my brain, and I started dying, essentially. It happened while I was playing soccer. Now, doctors think that it could have been a soccer injury, which it could have been, but definitely not that day. I had been having neck pain for several weeks at that point. So, I work in the computer. I'm in the computer all day. Terrible posture all day. So my assumption is, you know what? I just need to get up more, walk more, maybe stretch a little bit, go to the gym more. That was my thought. I'm just having neck pain because of bad posture. But it turned out to be the dissection. So I was playing soccer, and we were playing. I play in a adult league on Tuesday nights, and we were playing the championship game actually, and we were winning. The game was about to be over, and I started feeling dizzy.
mm,
And I just remember one of my teammates passing me the ball, and I couldn't react. Like I saw it happening, but my body wasn't reacting. And they were like, "What the hell?" And I was like, "I don't know."
Yeah, what's going on?
And next thing you know, everything started spinning, and it was spinning so fast
Oh,
that my initial reaction is like, "Oh my God, I'm going to collapse. I better grab my head and I'll drop instead of just dropping."
right.
And so when I dropped, people came over to see what was going on. One of my teammates asked, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I don't know what's wrong, but I 100% need to go see a doctor. Like,
Mm,
this is not normal." I was very fortunate that I was very close to a hospital. So from the time of collapsing and me seeing a doctor, it was no more than 20 minutes. I mean, it was that fast,
mm,
which contributes a lot to me being okay now, because people either die or become permanently disabled with these type of things. And there were so many things that went right for me,
mhm,
that allowed me to be almost normal. Like, I would say 99, 98% normal. I do
mhm.
have to take a pill every day. But besides that, I'm black with playing sports.
That's good.
Every now and again, I get dizzy. There's little small things that come back. My left side was affected a bit. Thankfully, I'm right-handed. But I woke up the next day at the hospital, not knowing what had happened. And a doctor comes in. He sits on the bed next to me, and he puts his hand like on my thigh, and he says, "I just want you to come to terms with the fact that you'll be disabled for the rest of your life." And I was like, "What?" Like, I was just
Yeah.
running
Well,
last night. Like, how could that be? What
yeah.
happened? He explained the situation. I was angry, not at him, just at the whole situation. And after he and all the nurses left the room, I I know this could sound a little bit naive, but my mentality was like, no, this is not going to stand. Like, no, I'm sorry, like, this will not stand.
Mhm.
So I couldn't walk, so I grabbed myself by the side of the bed, and I started doing little baby calf raises. Like, that's the only thing I could do. I'm already starting PT right now.
Mhm.
And I talked to a physical therapist the next day, still in the hospital, and she basically told me, doctors are going to want you to be conservative, and your body. So if you feel like you can push a little more, try to push a little bit more. That's how we see people improving. I can't tell you to what degree you're going to improve, but the more you push yourself, the more that you'll improve. And that to me made perfect sense. I had been an athlete my entire life by that point. So, yeah, of course, like, I took it as like, I'm out of shape now. I got to get in shape
Mm,
mentality. And I mean, I was doing so much more than what the doctors would recommend, because I heard another thing. They said around month 6, we don't see a lot of improvement. So wherever you are at month 6, that's more or less where you'll be for the rest of your life. So I was like, okay, now I have a timeline.
mm,
So I was very fortunate that through my work, I didn't have to worry about finances. I had enough money in the bank, and um, YouTube still generates money without me actually posting new videos, because there's a library of content that's about 10 years old
right.
that people do still watch, and it still generates AdSense revenue. Now, that won't last forever, but it could definitely hold me for, say 6 months or a year without doing anything. So in that context, I didn't have anything to worry about. And I have an obsessive personality, and my obsession became getting better. So I was in a walker, cane, eventually walking, eventually jogging and running. When I finally could walk, so I was living alone at the time. My mom had to move in with me because again I couldn't walk, and I lived in a 2-story place, so difficult going up and down, up and down the steps. But and there was also the chance of me having another one while my neck healed. So for about 4 months, I had to live with that thought of like, oh my God, this could happen again because my
Oh
neck hadn't
no.
fully
Yeah.
healed. So that was the scary part.
Wow.
But I started walking. I mean, I just remember I would go out and just walk to the front yard and then back into the house and eventually walk to the end of the block and back. By the time that I got to the furthest point, my mom and I were walking 6 miles a day. And that was after doing the exercises that the doctor recommended. I would go walk 6 miles, come back. I lived in a complex that also has a gym. So I would go to the gym and just work out more. So I was doing a lot more than they would recommend just because I wanted to get better. And, like, your body, especially if
Mhm.
you've played sports, your body. So I
Right.
knew that I could push it to that level. And there's certain things that I did, being quite honest, that like, oh my God, I shouldn't do that again because I got way too dizzy, or,
Yeah.
like I couldn't really control my body properly. So I did keep it contained, but at the same time, I pushed as much as I could.
What an incredible story. First off, let's get back to the part where when you were feeling dizzy on the field, I kept thinking about that and you grabbed your head so
Yeah.
that you wouldn't land on your head. That was a very
Yes.
smart thing to do. I think that was a quick thought of the moment. Definitely. This idea of you being in the hospital and the doctor telling you that you're going to be disabled for the rest of your life,
Mhm.
that's hard for anyone. I think for me, I would have felt the same way. I probably would have felt angry, a little pissed off.
Yeah.
And I'm very determined. I would have done probably the same thing you did,
Yeah.
start finding a way to get better. But I think also what's striking me here about this conversation is what happened while you were recovering. This idea of the content that you have built
Mhm.
that is allowing you to sustain yourself. And I think this is where we really need to, as listeners, think about this. When you're building something, the value of what you're building, how you're building it, can actually help you in certain times of need.
Mhm.
And so this idea of the YouTube channel, the content you have built over that 10-year time frame, these videos that are still circulating and generating views, that's an incredible thing. Why did you decide to start a YouTube channel? I think we know that you're obviously 1.9 million subscribers is incredible. But what made you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to start a YouTube channel.
Yeah, a couple of reasons. Something I didn't speak about was after college, I started working for Motorola as a designer. And
Hmm.
then eventually I wasn't happy with that corporate life. So I started a business with several friends, which ended up blowing up in my face. But it taught me a lot of valuable lessons that no business school probably could have taught me. And I was looking for a job. And I found a job through Craigslist with this like random person who owns a marketing company. And sent an email inquiring about the job. He calls me like at 6 p.m. He's like, hey, man, you have time to talk? And I was like, sure, let's talk. And we had a 30-minute conversation. He goes, you're hired. Show up Monday. And I'm like, okay, I'll show up Monday. So I showed up at this random marketing company, five full-time employees, about 15 contractors. And it turned out that it was a company that they create marketing content for doctors of chiropractic. So I worked at this company for about 7 years, and this to me was invaluable. I learned so much from working with this person, a self-made millionaire entrepreneur. His whole thing was about, creating good headlines, good attention-grabbing content, building communities through email lists, like all that stuff that are very beneficial for any type of content creator. I was learning. Also, that probably happened around 2009, 2009-ish, give or take. And that's around the time where Facebook ads and Facebook was really a thing. This is before the algorithms were throttling all your content. So he put me in charge of about 50 grand or so, like every quarter or every year, I forget, to generate Facebook ads. So I was teaching myself how to do all this stuff. Um, through his bank account, which was very beneficial for me. But at that point, I realized, hey, I want to create something. And my job with him was more of a developer. So working for Motorola, I started learning a lot of developing and coding and all that stuff. So he hired me as a developer to create a membership website. So that was my main thing at that company. But I also did a bunch of other things like the Facebook ads I just described. And I was kind of bored of so much developing. I even started a YouTube channel on WordPress on how to create WordPress websites, but I realized that I didn't have the skills to properly run a channel. That because in my philosophy is you have to be very good if you're teaching something so complex, and I didn't have the confidence to teach. Even though I was good, I wasn't as good as I would want to be to be in that position. So that YouTube channel didn't work out. But then, as I mentioned to you earlier, for fun, I would just do Photoshop stuff all day long. I would, just create graphics. That's what I always loved to do. And I eventually thought, well, I'll make a YouTube channel for people like me, which at the time was a mistake, but it was good. Ultimately, it was good, but it was a mistake, and I'll explain why. I was making videos that were more advanced. And by the way, I didn't even mention my name. I just wanted to show, like, it was not about me. It was all about the tutorial. And they were more advanced. They were about 45 minutes to an hour long. Now that I've been doing it for a long time, I realize that that's a mistake. Most people who are advanced do not go on YouTube to look for videos because they already know how to do it. So eventually I changed my content to more of a beginner friendly level so that more people could access it. So that was a change that eventually happened. But to answer your question is I just wanted to have another creative outlet where I could use my Photoshop skills because that's what I like to do anyway. And I knew that people would find it valuable. And I was very fortunate that by this point, I had already learned enough about creating communities that it was a huge head start. If I had started out my YouTube channel without knowing all that stuff, it would have probably held me back a year or two because I would have not started collecting emails from day one. I would have not known so much about, at that time it was SEO headlines, which is really what I was focusing on. I don't focus as much on that anymore. But the point is that I was focusing on all these things that a lot of first time creators don't focus on. And I already had a little bit of knowledge, which gave me just a step of a head start.
So the YouTube channel perspective is something that really you're allowed to put your experience on. But what you did first, you said one of the mistakes you made was that you were doing very complex videos for people that already knew how to do these videos. And so what you did is you tailored it down to beginners and helping them to learn how to do these things, which is really cool because you really decided that how do I want this YouTube channel to be? Not about me, but who I'm serving. And that shifted gears for you. So many people are going to ask now, should they launch their own YouTube channel? Because when I first launched mine, I didn't think much of it because when I launched it, it was during that time where Facebook was the thing. Instagram was the thing.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people very successful on YouTube. It was just a whole nother world, a whole nother galaxy, just a beast all of its own. And people were intimidated by that. If someone's looking to launch, say, for instance, a podcast or some other type of business, would it be good for them to consider launching a YouTube channel?
So the answer is yes, but it's a lot more complicated than a simple yes. Just like anything else, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So you have to kind of balance it because a YouTube channel requires a lot of attention. It requires a lot of care. So you're going to have to say no to a lot of other things in your life or business. So if you're willing to make that yes commitment, then we can have that conversation. And the conversation is, yes, there are outliers. There are people who are incredibly charismatic, hit the nail, right on the head from the first try, and they have viral videos and they blow up, overnight. But that's a very, 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 very tiny percent of the population. Most people will need years and years worth of effort and education to be successful at YouTube. So that is the yes, and everything I just mentioned.
I like how you're keeping it real with people because it is an effort. It does take time.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that I've talked to. They're like, oh, I'm getting a lot of videos and a lot of views on Facebook and I'm doing great. I said, okay, but if you're wanting to have people that just like you and already know you watch your videos, that's awesome. I said, but in order for it to get organic audiences, and that's what they want, You're going to have to, like you said, be consistent, put more time and effort. Which location are you going to be at? You're going to be here, or you're going to be there.
Mhm.
And I think that for YouTube, it is a big thing because we've heard of so many people being successful, but you said it's a very small percentage. So I'm just going to go ahead and say a name here, like the Jake and Logan Pauls. They're the big
Mhm.
thing right now, right? So they
Mhm.
started out on YouTube and they were just sensations. But people forget how long they were on YouTube.
Mhm.
Very long time. But
Yeah.
now they know how to market themselves
Mhm.
in the physical environment because they've spent all that time learning YouTube,
Yeah.
which is highly incredible. And speaking of marketing, how can someone effectively grow their brand? So you gave us the answers about YouTube. And we know now that if you're going to do YouTube, you've got to be serious about it. You got to put time and effort into it and do your research. And this is what you teach, doing the research on things and helping with YouTube. How can someone effectively grow their brand
Mhm.
on starting a YouTube channel?
Yeah. So my perspective on that is this. So I'm going to expand the question, but hopefully it'll answer
Okay.
your specific question. I believe that in order to be successful on YouTube, you have to learn how to package your content, and that means a lot. Let me explain that. So
Mhm.
I'm making Photoshop tutorials, right? That's what I'm making. But in reality, at the end of the day, what I'm really offering is a package. And the better I can package this, the more successful the videos will be. To give you an example, there's people that there are people who might be way better at me than Photoshop, but they don't know how to package their content, so they will fail on YouTube. There's people who are a lot worse than me in Photoshop and know how to package it better than me and could be more successful than me.
Mm.
And what does that mean, packaging? It means everything. It means branding. So, for example, with me, I could have made a YouTube channel that was the creativity YouTube channel because I know how to do Adobe Photoshop. I know how to do Adobe Illustrator. I know how to edit videos. I know how to do WordPress and all these different things. But I knew that I wanted my name to be synonymous with Photoshop, and I couldn't
Mhm.
do that if I had 31 things under my YouTube channel. Because if somebody who doesn't know me goes to my channel and they see 30 things, they don't know what I do.
Mhm.
And I wanted to make it very simple. One of the reasons I think I've done so many speaking events is because when they're looking for Photoshop people, there's a very short list of Photoshop people. The
Right.
list of creatives who do Photoshop and other things is incredibly long. So it becomes really easy for someone to make a decision if this is a Photoshop person. The example that I like to give is if you're going to get married and you're looking for a photographer and you have a choice between a photographer that does events, that does weddings, that does, bar mitzvahs, and that they do everything. And then you have a photographer that does weddings, you're more likely to go with the wedding photographer
The
because
wedding
that's their.
photographer.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's exactly how I feel about YouTube channels in general. Of course, there's outliers to do everything, but at the end of the day, there had to be it's the way that they package the content that allows them to do everything. For most of us, we kind of have to niche down until we create that critical mass and have enough audiences that we can then expand to other things. I don't think, I'm not saying it's not, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's more difficult to do 20 things in a YouTube channel and be successful rather than doing one, maybe two related topics and then be successful. I think that's the easier route. Especially if you're a solopreneur and you don't have a team behind you, you don't have a lot of money behind you. The more wheels are spinning, the more difficult things become. So it's easier to keep it contained to one thing
Mhm.
because you can focus on that one thing and get good at that one thing by yourself. If you have the means to hire a full team and have multiple wheels spinning at the same time, then fine. But again, that's not most of us.
Definitely not starting out.
Right.
You have one person doing everything. And I think that's
Exactly.
important to do everything because then you learn what works and what doesn't work. That way, if you're able to delegate it out, you can get things done in a smoother fashion.
And
Thank
and
you so
let's talk
much.
about
Yeah.
that, like what works and what doesn't work, because
Yeah.
I try to be I'm very emotional about my YouTube channel in the sense that it's my passion, but I'm very not emotional about it when it comes to the numbers because at the end of the day, I feel that I'm confident enough to know that I'm good at what I do.
Mhm.
The problem is, am I presenting this in a way that you and the audience can digest it and enjoy it? That's where the problem is for me. So when I look at the data, when something doesn't work or doesn't do well, I don't take it as an attack to like, oh, I'm bad or I'm terrible. I just take it as okay, they didn't like the way I presented this. How can I present it better next time?
Mm.
Same content, just in a different packaging, as I like to call it. And I think that a lot of people might be too egotistical to say, no, this is the way it should be, and I'm not going to change it because, again, I'm a person who I believe in the quote attributed to Einstein. Who knows if he said it or not? But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing twice and expecting different results.
That is him.
So if you look at the YouTube data, the analytics, and every single person drops off after 10 seconds, or the majority, then that means there's something wrong with the 10 seconds. I mean, there is just no if and buts about it. So what are you going to do? Keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect different results? Or, hey, what am I saying in the first 10 seconds? Maybe this introduction is too long. Maybe, like in my case, I used to do introductions that were about 2 minutes. So, hey, everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Photoshop training channel. My name is Jesus Ramirez. You can find me on Instagram at JR from Pete. I still remember it, and I would talk for a minute. Anyway, last week on my trip to Jamaica, I had a lot of fun, and here's some of the photos that I took. We're going to remove this, monkey from the photo or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I started noticing that people were dropping off. And people would leave in the comments, good content, but introduction's too long. All right, what do I do? Like today, if you watch my videos, in this video, I'm going to show you how to remove a background from a photo. Let's get started. Because I realized that my YouTube channel, I'm not Logan Paul, right? People don't want to come to my YouTube channel to see my life. They might have a personal connection with me. And for example, when I had my stroke, I posted a video about it, telling everybody I was okay. But that was a situation. I got a lot of lovely comments. But that was like a situation that was out of the ordinary. Ordinarily speaking, people come to my channel because they want to learn how to do something in Photoshop. So the faster and more concise I can deliver on that promise I made when they clicked on the video, the happier they're going to be and the more likely they're going to subscribe to me. So you have to be very aware on why people are listening or watching your video. If it's for them to see your life, then that's fine. Talk about your trip to Jamaica. Talk about all those other things. But if they're coming to your videos for, woodworking, then there is no need to talk about that unless it's relative to the actual video. And don't make it too long-winded because one of the most successful YouTubers in the world is, I think the most successful YouTuber in the world is Mr. Beast. And if you look at his videos, they start fast. He hooks them right away. He tries to deliver on the promise right away. And that is the most successful, most subscribed to YouTuber on the planet. So I've always believed that success leaves clues. And that's one of the clues he's leaving behind for the rest of us. Just see how he starts his videos. Analytics show that if you manage to keep a viewer past about 30 seconds on YouTube long-form content, they're more likely to stay to the end of the video. So if you don't manage to hook somebody within the first 30 seconds, they're gone. They're just not going to watch the entire thing. So that's what I try to focus on my videos now, talking about short form content and by the way, I'm not someone who teaches how to be super successful on YouTube. I'm just talking from experience, and this is what works with me. So if like a YouTube guru says something that completely contradicts me, I don't know what to say because I only have my channel as proof.
You're speaking from your perspective. Yes.
Having said that, I have more subscribers than a lot of people who teach YouTube. So anyway, so that. in my research on short form content, from what I'm seeing today, is that and I'm talking about specifically about TikTok, but usually if a video does well on TikTok, it'll do well on the other platforms. So if I upload a short video on TikTok and I manage to keep over 50% of the viewers past second number 5, it'll be a successful video to me. And that to me means 100,000 views or more. So that just shows you that people, if you don't hook them in second 1 or 2, they're gone. So there is no margin of error these days. Now, if you're someone who's engaging or who can come up with a good package for your video that'll hook somebody right away, you'll be successful for sure, no doubt. And again, I'm completely aware that different niches have different, you might have a bit more leeway if you're doing entertainment, if you're doing music. But for educational content, it's a little more difficult in the context of hooking somebody right away, but it's easier in the context of people looking for stuff that you're teaching. So we do have that advantage.
I like that too. I like how you mentioned about hooking people because it is important. And so for people that are listening today, if your content is not hooking people within that first, I would say 7 seconds, 5 to 7 seconds, then it's most likely they're not going to stick around. And so it doesn't mean that your content that you mentioned, Jesus, before, doesn't mean your content's not good. So if you're starting this out and you're wondering why and you're thinking about quitting, don't.
Mhm.
You just have to learn how to package it a different way and find out what is not working and why it's not working, and even ask around and follow people like Jesus and see what he's doing on his YouTube channel and other people that are successful, and then find a way to make those adjustments.
Mhm.
One of my questions for you, Jesus, was going to be about the 1 million subscribers on YouTube, how to get that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to rephrase that question because right now, what you've shared with us is powerful. And I want the audience to know that the numbers are great, but it's more of why you're doing this, the purpose behind it, because that's going to drive more people to want to come and see you. But just on the top of, just for the people who are already successful, let's just start with that one. They're already pretty good at YouTube. They've got so many followers. They're trying to get to that 1 million rank. So what would you give them as a means of possibly advice of how to keep pushing to get more subscribers to get that 1 million mark going?
I think that, and just to be clear, this is for people who have some relative success, and
Yes.
we just want to keep pushing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I went through that. I remember, I feel like I was in the 100 to 250,000 follower mark for a really, really long time. And that was around 250,000 or so is when I decided to become a professional creator. When I was like, screw it, I'm all in. And I'm not telling people to go ahead and quit their jobs and just just go and be a YouTuber or
Don't
a
quit your
podcaster or
job.
whatever. But I am saying that at some point you have to take it seriously if you want to get to that next level. And what that means is you got to start saying no to a lot of things in your personal life so you can say yes to this. It is a rewarding job. It is, you know what? I work a lot of hours and sometimes I'm stressed out or whatever. We're all human. But at the end of the day, I'm not picking dates off a palm tree. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it is relatively easy compared to many backbreaking jobs out there. And it's rewarded well if you do well enough. But the point is that at some point, I would advise that you need to take it seriously. And seriously, what that really means, in my opinion, is two things. Number one is take the feedback that I just described seriously. Take back the analytics seriously. If people are dropping off, why is that? Maybe you don't need an intro. Maybe you don't need an outro. Like if you look at my videos now, I never say goodbye. I just like this, how you remove a background, boom, video's done.
Mm-hmm.
In part because I hate being on camera. If you go back and watch my videos, I didn't start showing my face until maybe year 6 or 7. But I do realize that people do want to make an emotional connection with you, and showing yourself on camera is a part of that. Another reason why I don't have an outro is because retention rate is highly important in YouTube at the moment. So I realized by watching my analytics that as soon as the tutorial was done and I said things like, okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching, make sure you subscribe, like, follow. I have another video on masking, link down below. I noticed that my retention rate, like the last minute, literally went from like 40% all the way down to like 3%. So that means that only about 3% of people made it all the way to the end. So I'm like, well, then if nobody's watching this, why am I going to like publish? Like, it saves me time. So as soon as the video's over, I'm like, this is how you remove a background. Click on the button, background gone. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Video done. Not even a 2-second outro, and that helps with retention rate. So that's what I mean. Look at the data and take the data seriously. The other thing is take your education seriously. Like to this day, I still watch videos on other YouTubers and how they're being successful in their channel. Because to be frank with you, 90% of those videos, either in my opinion, are incorrect or they're teaching something I already know. But I'm worried about that 10%. That's what I'm looking for. And, it might take me 10 videos, but eventually I'll get to that 10% that I don't know or it's a good idea. And then that's what I will implement. But obviously, if you're just starting out and you're starting to take it seriously, more videos are going to be beneficial to you because all this information is going to be new to you. And the next thing is not to be, we all have the imposter syndrome. Like I've been in a stage talking to 5,000 people in Mexico City. Adobe flew me out there. Adobe has flown me out to Sydney, Australia to do a 30-minute presentation. Like I couldn't believe it. They were like, do you want to go to Sydney, Australia? We'll pay for a week, your wages and a week's trip for 30 minutes on stage. I was like, are you kidding? Of course,
I'm there.
But even with all those wins, to this day I still get that imposter syndrome, right? And what I tell people is, you deserve to be anywhere you decide to put yourself to be in. Like, even if people are better than you, it doesn't matter. If you're in that crowd, you deserve to be there. So try to be less afraid, be more proactive on reaching out to people, maybe collaborate, maybe in my case, in the case of Photoshop, what I started doing is I realized that there was a lot of Photoshop conferences. So me being introverted, when I was in school, I could go an entire day without saying a single word. I just don't like to talk. So I remember I flew out in 2013 after my YouTube channel was about a year or 2 years old. I flew out to Vegas. They had a conference called Photoshop World. I've been a speaker at it now. But when I flew out there, I remember I thought I was killing it. I was like, yeah, I got 10,000 followers on YouTube. I was just starting out or whatever number it was. It wasn't very high. But I started meeting people, and some of those people are some of my best friends in the world now. And some of these people, because they're all in that community, have contacts. Some of the first person I ever met at an event for Photoshop was a man named Mark Heaps, who is one of my best friends in the world now. I started a podcast. He's my first guest, and Mark is involved in another company who has it's called Creative Pro. It's a huge creativity event, and he is part of the team that like selects speakers. So I became a speaker there. Out of that one connection I made at a bar in Vegas on a random, Wednesday night or whatever day we flew into Vegas that day for the event. The point that I'm trying to make is I took it seriously. I realized that I wanted to make it my career, so I needed to treat it as such. We talked a lot about sports earlier. The analogy in my head is, okay, I'm turning pro. Like, I'm no longer playing high school. I'm no longer playing college. I'm playing pro. So how does a pro creator act? What do they do? In my opinion, they're constantly learning. They're networking, putting themselves out there, and just continue to improve on their craft, whatever their craft may be. For me, my craft is creativity in Photoshop. And at the same time, it's also content creating. So I'm trying to improve both at the same time.
Love it. It's amazing how we can meet people when we do certain things and you take what you're doing seriously. I love that story that you share with us. And just back to the question of the subscribers. I want to be very clear the reason why I decided to not just say that, how do you get 1 million subscribers, is because, like you were saying through this whole conversation, when you're doing something, it is not easy. It is going to be a journey. I don't want any one of you listening today getting discouraged because you don't have that 1 million subscribers, because it takes time. It takes a lot of effort to do that.
Yeah.
And so, and you just really paved that way for us, showing us how to stay consistent, take it seriously, listen to the right people. Like you were saying, you're a student, you still study, you still look at what's working in the market, what's not working. You go back and check your data, your stats. All these things play factors. Now, speaking of factors of what you've been doing successfully with your channel in Photoshop, what are some of your favorite Photoshop tips and tricks, if you want to share a little bit with us today?
Oh, man. Without having the application in front of me is difficult, but here, I'll say this. Photoshop is an incredibly powerful tool. It is used by, I don't know how accurate this data is, but what seems like 90+% of professional creatives. I do have to make a disclaimer. These days, a professional creative can be someone who uses Canva to generate a social media graphic. They're getting paid for that creativity. So that is also a professional creative. I'm not trying to demean in any way people who do that. When I say professional creative, in my mind at least, is more old school, more people who are, creating magazine layouts, people who are working in Hollywood, people who are doing what would be considered high level work. In that context, I would say 90+% of creators use Adobe Photoshop. It's an application that was created in 1988 and sold to Adobe in 1989. The application hasn't changed much. So when you open it up, it looks and feels like design many, many years ago, 30 plus years ago, 35 or whatever we are at now. But the point is that because of that, it is an overwhelming tool. There's so many menus, so many tools, so much stuff you can learn that it is overwhelming. And the biggest tip I can give to someone is think about what you want to do with the application. Why are you opening up Photoshop and why are you using it? Because being brutally honest, Photoshop may not be the best tool for you because it has too much. Maybe it's Adobe Lightroom, which is an application for photographers and it's slider based and you can control the lighting and color of a photo in almost any way. You can remove small blemishes and small distractions from photos, and that may be all you need, and that might be more beneficial to you because the learning curve is so much smaller. Now, if you tell me, well, my goal is to create compositing, which is essentially putting two or more photos together to make it seem like a single photo, then in that case, Photoshop is the tool you need. And I would focus on learning just the compositing tools, masking, selections, color matching, that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't worry about any of the design tools and all that other stuff because it just will become too overwhelming. So I guess the biggest tip is figure out why you're opening the application and then focus on those areas. And as you start developing more skills, by all means, expand, learn about type, learn about design tools, learn about all this other stuff. But don't try to learn everything at once because it is truly very overwhelming.
Great tip, and thank you for that information regarding Adobe. And like you were saying, I love the disclaimer you used too, because there's some people that use different platforms.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest with you, when I got on Adobe, I was like, "Oop, okay, not for me."
Yeah, exactly.
It's very overwhelming.
Yes.
I was like, "Let me pop over here and try this."
Yes.
But however, there's a lot of people that can be very effective in Adobe. You just got to stick with it.
Mhm.
And speaking of learning more about Adobe, how can our listeners today learn more about what you're teaching, such as your YouTube channel? Where do they go for that to learn more about your videos and your next upcoming events that you'll be sharing more about the power of Adobe?
Yeah, for sure. Photoshop Training Channel is a YouTube. Photoshop Training Channel is the website. There's an events tab with all the events coming up. The next event I'll be at is in Las Vegas, actually, in about 2 weeks. I believe March 5th, if I'm not mistaken, March 5th, 2023. That week is WPPI, which is a wedding photographer event, a pretty large event, very well known in the industry. So I'll be there. And usually I'm a speaker at Adobe Max, which is Adobe's flagship creativity event. And this is like, for people who like don't know anything about this, this is essentially the same thing that like Apple does once a year when they release the new iPhone or the new MacBook Pro or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Adobe has a similar event where they release a new version of Photoshop every year. It usually happens around October and November, and I've been a speaker there for the last 6 years. So I'll definitely be there this year. I just don't know to what capacity as of yet.
My last question for all my guests here, Jesus. What does living a purposeful life mean to you?
I like how you phrase that mean to me because I think it means completely different things to everybody. And to me, living a purposeful life means that I don't want to ever look back and said, I wish I would have tried that, or I wish I would have gone for that. I would rather fail than say, I should have done that. Because I feel that when I was much younger, I had a lot of those regrets of like, man, I wish I would have tried this. I wish I would have done that. Around my 30s is when my mentality started to change. So I don't have too many of those after 30. But my purposeful life for me would be try everything you want to try. And I don't, and this does not mean business at all. Yes, business is part of that, but also family. Like try getting married, try having kids. Like I had the mentality if I don't want to have any kids for a really, really long time. The stroke really changed that, by the way. So now, to be honest, hey, by the way, here's something I haven't announced publicly anywhere. I'm actually getting married in September of this year, September 22nd.
Congratulations.
Will be my wedding date, and we just set the date last night. Actually, we found the venue, and my fiance and I are already talking about having kids. So for me, the purposeful life is to have a life that I have no regrets with, and I would have regretted not having children, not having a family, which is the mentality that I had, say 2-3 years ago. So that's what it is for me. Just, and I know it sounds kind of selfish to say I just want to do the things I want to do, but that's really what it means for me. But in in a way that it doesn't hurt anyone and it has a positive impact on other people. That I needed to add that in there because of my work. I always think about when I create something, is not about how many views is this video going to get. I think more about how many people can I help? Because the more people I can help, the more likely they're willing to share it. And it's like a two-way street. It's not just about me and getting a lot of views. It's more like, if I help you, 1,000% you're going to help me back. And there's a quote that I wish I could remember who said it, but it was like, give people what they want and they'll give you what you want. So always be a person of service. And that I wanted to tie that into the answer, because I didn't want you to think that I was like, no, I'm just going to live a hedonistic lifestyle and it's all about me.
Well, it's about you to a certain extent, but what I like about you is that you understand that it's about people that you are impacting. And that quote you mentioned, I think it came from either Jim Rohn or Earl Nightingale. One of those two. I'm not sure which one. This has been an amazing time, Jesus, and you dropped a lot of gems for us today regarding how to be successful in the world of Adobe and also of YouTube. And more importantly, the why behind what we do is a driving factor. You've been incredible, and I am looking forward to seeing much more from you and your success.
Thank you so much, Adrian. It was a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you for listening to Your Purposeful Life today, and I'm your host, Adrian Starks. Download this podcast on any platform of your choice by going to our website, yourpurposeful.life. Join me on my social media channels and be a part of the Your Purposeful Life community. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that like button with a purpose. Let's help you shape your purpose your way.